in the sand where I walk.
We reject the ideology of globalism, and we embrace the doctrine of patriotism.
Not only will this tax plan pay for itself, but it will pay down debt.
There are moral and legal obligation questions that I think we'll have to wrestle with as a society.
When we as people go wobbly on the truth, we go wobbly on America.
All you have to do is look at the numbers, look at what we've done.
And this is only the beginning.
From 100.9 FM WXIR, this is Evidence of Design, and I'm your host, Jason Taylor. Evidence of Design is a live talk show about the political economy. We critique income and wealth inequality and support democratic values. Thank you for listening, and welcome. Good morning, everyone. It is Saturday, September 28th, and you're listening to 100.9 FM WXIR in Rochester, New York. This is Evidence of Design, and I'm your host, Jason Taylor, joined by my good friends and co-hosts, Matt Treadwell.
Good morning.
And Mary Lawrence.
Good morning.
For those new to Evidence of Design, we critique income and wealth inequality, support democratic values, and social justice on this show. Thank you for tuning in, whether it is through the dial at 100.9 FM or whether it is online, www.1009wxir.com, or through the TuneIn app. Thanks for being here, supporting grassroots radio and also democratic values and social justice. Folks, this is it. We've made it. It is impeachment week.
Don't blow your load yet.
It's a little late for peaches this season.
Streamers, party hats. Mary, that was a good one. Yes, Donald J. Trump. He's not impeached yet. There are impeachment inquiries opened. The House has formally opened an impeachment inquiry against the President of the United States. It's only taken us 3 years to get to the point where our brave leaders have decided that, you know what, maybe this president, maybe he shouldn't really be president after all, because he's not doing, the best things for the country.
What?
Yep. And it all started because of a wee little phone call that Donald Trump had. Not even a tweet. Everyone thought it'd be a tweet, but clearly you can tweet whatever you'd like, and nothing matters for what you tweet
say
anymore.
whatever you like.
Yeah. So, here we are, folks. It is impeachment week. We're going to be talking, I'm sort of half joking because, oh my God, why wasn't he impeached 3 years ago? But
why was he ever elected?
Yeah, that is the question.
Yeah, good one. So we'll start off the show today talking about this impeachment inquiry opened by the House of Representatives, controlled by the Democrats. We'll talk about kind of like where that came from and the implications of it. And then we'll spend the remainder of our show talking about business and the Business Roundtable and how the Business Roundtable, which is a group of the nation's top CEOs and business leaders, how they came out with a new kind of redefinition of what business is all about. And they're saying that business should care a lot more about just profit nowadays. Woo! Yay! All of these things that, what? Why is it taking so long to come up with this stuff? I'm looking at the old Twitter machine right now, and the last tweet from Trump is, "I am draining the swamp," and then there's a video. And then the next tweet after that is, "Keep America great." The next tweet after that is, "Make America great again." And then my favorite, the next tweet after that is presidential harassment. And they're all in capital letters, and they all end with an exclamation point.
Presidential harassment?
Presidential harassment. Oh God, this guy is funny. So let's talk about the impeachment inquiry, and we want to hear from you throughout the show, folks. We are live for you on this Saturday, September 28th. So do give us a ring, 585-219-8889. That is 585-219-8889. We're also able to take an email from you by reaching us at radioeod@gmail.com, and that number one more time, 585-219-8889.
Overhand Salmon, Bad Weapon with the new single UFO Blues.
And
That was a jam.
it was a jam. We were dancing in the studio. We're not on Facebook Live, are we? So this is 100.9 FM WXAR in Rochester. Thanks for tuning in to Evidence of Design. Let's talk about impeachment, folks. This is it. Is he out? Are we finally over Donald Trump?
Maybe.
Maybe. Matt?
I wouldn't hold my breath.
Okay, I'm way more optimistic about all of this than you both are, I think. So this week, the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, finally formally announced that the House is opening up an impeachment inquiry against Donald Trump. Where is this all coming from? Well, a whistleblower, that means someone who disclosed information that was privy towards the job that they were doing. This person found that stuff that he or she uncovered in their job was like, whoa, a superior needs to know about this because this might not be okay. So this whistleblower disclosed information to superiors, the IG of the, I don't know where the IG was from. I don't know if it was in the CIA or the Justice Department. I should know that. I do know that, but not off the top of my head. So this whistleblower disclosed this information, and I want to read from you from the unclassified transcript of the whistleblower here. And the whistleblower writes, I am reporting an urgent concern in accordance with procedures outlined in ... In the course of my official duties, I have received information from multiple U.S. government officials that the President of the United States is using the power of his office to solicit interference from a foreign country in the 2020 U.S. election. This interference includes, among other things, pressuring a foreign country to investigate one of the President's main domestic political rivals. The President's personal lawyer, Mr. Rudolph Giuliani, is a central figure in this effort. Attorney General Barr appears to be involved as well. So that was part of the unveiled transcript from the whistleblower and the complaint this whistleblower uncovered, and it relates to potential abuse of power by President Trump to solicit interference from a foreign country in the 2020 U.S. election. By gosh, doesn't this sound familiar?
I was just going to say, this sounds like something we've heard before.
Huh. Didn't we go through a long investigation from a guy known as Robert Mueller who was trying to uncover evidence of foreign interference in the U.S. election?
I can't be bothered to remember what happened 3 months ago.
That was like a whole 8 weeks.
Yeah,
weeks
totally.
Ago,
what a fun ride this has been. So Robert Mueller, of course, came out with it. He was a special counsel appointed after Trump fired James Comey, and he fired James Comey, who was then the FBI director. He fired him because James Comey wouldn't let go the Russia investigation, the investigation into Russia's interference in the U.S. election. So Trump fired him. That created a political firestorm, and then a special counsel was appointed. So Robert Mueller, of course, famously or infamously, investigated for about 2 years Russian foreign interference in the U.S. election, and he concluded that, yes, Russia 100% interfered and did a lot of things to try to make our election be compromised in favor of Trump or the Russians. And now, also in the Mueller testimony, it was found that the Trump campaign did not collude with Russia, or at least he couldn't really. He found that the Trump campaign didn't collude with Russia, but he wasn't able to decide if there was obstruction of justice. And now here we are with another report that the president is working with a foreign power to interfere with U.S. elections.
It's almost like he didn't learn his lesson.
Yeah, I think so too. And so, what is at stake here is that there were a transcript released of President Donald Trump's phone call with the Ukrainian president. Oh, his name is escaping me. It begins with a Z. Should have it right in front of me. But
Zelensky.
Zelensky? Yeah, the Ukrainian president, Mr. Zelensky. Let's go with that for right now. And, what's at stake here is that the transcript revealed that President Trump was asking the president of Ukraine to investigate the Biden family. Zelensky. Apologize. Yeah, so Mr. Zelensky. So Trump was asking the president of Ukraine, Mr. Zelensky, to investigate the Biden family and try to uncover political dirt on them. That's not good.
No.
That's not good for a lot of reasons. That's not normal activity of the President of the United States. It's not normal activity of a human being who cares about integrity and ethics and justice. It's not good.
And autonomy in our elections.
Yeah. So, asking a foreign power to uncover dirt on domestic political rivals is not normal, although it might feel normal after like 3 years of Trump in office. That's something that we as a democratic society should be really angry and scared and worried about. And I think it's okay to say that.
I don't think that anybody should be surprised, however, if we can all remember back when, during the 2016 election cycle, how Trump, I believe it was during either a debate or on either a debate with Hillary Clinton or a debate with the Republican primary, that he explicitly asked Russia to look into Hillary Clinton's emails.
Yep. He's like, hey, Russia, if you're listening, why don't you look into Clinton and find some dirt on her? And then, of course, WikiLeaks released the hacked DNC emails from John Podesta, DNC meaning Democratic National Committee, and that sort of created the political firestorm that was the whole Russia imbroglio. Still living through that.
Yeah. I just don't know, what did people expect? This is just par for the course, I think. It's obviously, I think that this is something that Trump should have to answer for. I think if this is the thing that impeaches him, sure, why not? But I just feel like there was so much that came before this that it's just fine to me that this is the thing that is kicking this off.
What else could Trump be impeached for in your mind, Matt?
Like putting children in cages and abandoned Walmarts and separating them from their families, and just about every environmental policy that he has, to name a few.
Blatantly lying all the time, not telling the truth.
His record with women.
Yeah. His financial dealings and malpractice.
The history of racism with his apartments in New York in the 70s. How he wouldn't lodge black tenants. Asking the question, what is Donald Trump impeachable for? You're better off asking, what is he not impeachable for? Like, what about him is actually not reprehensible? And I don't know.
Yeah. I think it would help to explain what the impeachment process is.
Yeah. And
so, in the Constitution, I believe it's described in Article 1, which is the part of the Constitution that has to deal with the legislative branch. I think so. I'll have to look it up there. Impeachment doesn't have its own clause, to my knowledge. It's kind of broken off into the various parts of the Constitution. But in the Constitution, it writes that the legislative branch can start an impeachment inquiry against, say, the president for treason, bribery, or high crimes and misdemeanors. And so, whether or not Donald Trump has committed treason, bribery, or high crimes and misdemeanors, those are all kind of criminal things. And I would argue, although whether or not you can argue with the law and whether something happens, I realize that's up for debate. I would argue Trump, he's guilty of one of those four things, treason, bribery, or high crimes and misdemeanors in some ways. And we could define that. But we don't even need to go there, right? Trump doesn't need to be impeached just for those things, because Alexander Hamilton and the Federalist Papers, and these were the papers that around the Constitution were able to describe and sort of flesh out more of the details of what the things in the Constitution says and what they mean. So, Hamilton famously wrote that the impeachment process is also meant to be a process through which you can get rid of someone in high office, someone who is breaking the public trust and eroding the fabric of society. There you go. I think that's all you need to know with Donald Trump and this whole presidency is that it's probably one of the worst things that could happen to democracy and also the environment. The worst thing.
Yeah, I think certainly breaking the public trust would be up there in his case. Like you mentioned earlier, just with blatant lying all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a trillion reasons why he's unfit to be president, and the fact that this phone call, this sort of damning phone call came out that clearly shows that he was trying to solicit foreign interference into our own election such that he could get reelected by blaming the Bidens for something that like the entire political elite does, so he's trying to frame the Bidens, Hunter Biden specifically, Joe Biden's son, he's trying to frame him as like using his influence on one of Ukraine's trying to use his influence as a board member of one of Ukraine's oil companies, trying to use that influence to like wield political power in Ukraine. That's what he's trying to get him for. But like Paul Manafort, who was his one of his closest political allies, Donald Trump, was convicted and is now in jail for doing just that in Ukraine, like soliciting money and influence and power. And so like it's not just a Democrat-Republican thing with this. It's like the entire political elite and establishment in the country uses their influence as members of the global 1% to like sit on boards of wealthy companies and try to get legislation passed, whether it's in the U.S. or abroad, in favor of their own interests. And I'm not in favor of Joe Biden either, or like behavior like that where you sit on boards of companies that produce oil and gas. Bernie Sanders doesn't do that stuff, for instance. Those are choices that you can make. And but I understand that if you're a member of like the 1% and the political elite, like a lot of things just make more sense to you than it does for like other people. So that's not okay either. But the point is like you shouldn't ask a foreign country to interfere in the election. Well, what has Trump's response been to all of this? As you can probably guess, it's pretty erudite. It's pretty concise, pretty clear.
I get the impression that he doesn't want to be impeached.
Yeah, because if he's impeached, he knows he'll go to jail after he's out of office because he'll then be subject to a bunch of crimes that, he's not able to be indicted for now because of the interpretation of Justice Department law. Matt, should we listen to what Donald Trump had to say? This is when he was at the United Nations conference this week, and his reaction to this impeachment inquiry.
Let's do it.
So it was all planned, and the witch hunt continues, but they're getting hit hard on this witch hunt because when they look at the information, it's a joke. Impeachment for that? When you have a wonderful meeting or you have a wonderful phone conversation? I think you should ask. We actually, that was the second conversation. I think you should ask for the first conversation also. I can't believe they haven't, although I heard there's a rumor out they want the first conversation. It was beautiful. It was just a perfect conversation. But I think you should do that. I think you should and I think you should ask for VP Pence's conversation because he had a couple of conversations also. I could save you a lot of time. They were all perfect. Nothing was mentioned of any import other than congratulations. But the word is that they're going to ask for the first phone conversation. You can have it anytime you need it. And also Mike Pence's conversations, which were, I think, one or two of them. They were perfect. They were all perfect. It's very sad what the Democrats are doing to this country. They're dividing. They're belittling. They're demeaning our country. So many leaders came up to me today and they said, "Sir, would you go?"
I think you should do that. I think you should do.
Yo, this is the weakest defense I've ever heard for anything.
Oh, I don't know. That seemed like a perfect defense with nothing of any import, as he suggested.
I don't understand how you can call. What does a perfect conversation mean?
Apparently something where you, I mean, according to what he said, it's a conversation where nothing is discussed and you just congratulate.
Mr. President, sir, you've been the House of Representatives has opened a formal impeachment inquiry against you. What do you have to say about this conversation you had with the President of Ukraine? It was a perfect conversation. Like, are you serious? Is that it? Is that where we're at? Is that it? Is there nothing, like, are we out of it? He's usually pretty good at coming up with excuses. You know?
He?
I think he's pretty crafty about, like, some, like the Democrats. That it was a perfect conversation. That's weak.
I think, I don't have any trouble imagining Trump sitting at home in the White House, just sort of, or Mar-a-Lago, just sort of rating the conversations he's had through the day based on how much of his ego was stroked in it.
It was a perfect conversation.
Yeah, I guess I could see how he would think it's a perfect conversation because, from the transcript, it is a lot of ego stroking.
Yeah.
One president to another.
Yep. So I guess the president's definition of a perfect conversation is one in which he asks a foreign leader to investigate a domestic political rival. That's our new definition of perfect conversations in our democratic republic in the United States of America.
That's a high bar.
And then the president responds, "Great job."
Yep. So oh boy. Anyways, folks, do we have anything more to say on this?
I think you should do that. I think you should do. Yeah.
I don't. So this is historic, right? Only two other presidents have ever been impeached: Andrew Johnson in the 1860s, and then President Bill Clinton in the 1990s. Richard Nixon, in all likelihood, would have been impeached, but he resigned before his impeachment. So if Donald Trump is impeached, all that's happened right now is the House of Representatives has opened up an impeachment inquiry. What that means is that they're doing investigations as they've been doing, and then if they come up with what they think is enough evidence to hold a vote on the floor of the House of Representatives, they can then, 2/3 of the members of the House must vote to then formally impeach the president. And what that means is he would then be indicted. He'd be formally charged with wrongdoing. So if the House does hold that floor vote, and if 2/3 of the House does vote to impeach Donald Trump, he is not out of office. What it does do then is the indictment goes to the U.S. Senate, where 2/3 of senators must vote then to impeach and remove Donald Trump from office. You need 2/3 of the senators then to officially remove the president. There is no appeal. He would be removed from office, and then the vice president, Mike Pence, would take over.
If that happens, does Trump then face charges?
I don't know.
Or is that unrelated?
I think that then other jurisdictions could file charges against him, like the Southern District of New York, etc., for a number of things. There's a litany of things that Donald Trump could be charged for crimes with. It's really amazing, how many. As a sort of a normal everyday person, you're not often faced with legal challenges, I think, and it's just really astounding how many things that Donald Trump could be charged with and sued for. It's really astounding. And so, I'm not sure, but yes, he could be opened up to other charges and actually be put behind bars if those things go through. So, we're kind of at the still beginning stages, but this is historic for a number of reasons, and especially because it is right, we're in the middle, we're right before the middle of a presidential election season. We're a year from now, we will be a month away from electing the next president of the United States. And so it's a big deal.
It will be really interesting to see how this has an effect on Trump's campaign, because I'm sure it will strengthen, his description of a witch hunt might strengthen some of his supporters who are, really diehard. But I do wonder if having a formal impeachment inquiry will have an effect on his already low ratings, on whether people will see this is an actual legal proceeding, or if they'll continue to, follow him.
Yeah. The big difference between what's going on right now and the Robert Mueller investigation is that this is all playing out live for us as the American public. For the Robert Mueller investigation, it was investigating things that happened a year, 2 years, or 3 years before, which isn't that long, but still people, it's just easier to have an appetite for things when it's breaking news, whoa, what the heck is going on with this? And it's not just that Trump had this conversation with President Zelensky of Ukraine and was asking him to undercover dirt on Joe Biden to help Donald Trump be reelected in the United States. That's reprehensible, and that I think is impeachable. But it's also that it appears that the Trump administration is trying to do a cover-up of those phone calls. And before all this broke out, the Trump administration was putting those phone records that call the president of Ukraine in a secret classified computer database in the administration that is only really used for top level secret code name, highly classified intelligence matters. that is not good.
Yeah.
You know, like that to me is a huge red flag, and I don't know what defense he has, because you don't put perfect conversations in highly classified secret computer intelligence systems, right? Perfect conversations do not go there.
I don't know. Did we also mention that it appears that Trump at least implied to be withholding funds that had been approved for Ukraine?
Yeah, there's that too, Matt. The great point where the Trump administration, you know, the U.S. government has, at least since the Russian invasion of Ukraine and Crimea in 2014, this is all tied to that. We don't have time to go into it right now, but it's fascinating. At least since then, the U.S. government has been sending supplies and military assistance to Ukraine because, well, Russia is waging a clandestine and guerrilla operations war in Ukraine because Russia is, at least the Russian government is, I think, a sort of a not helpful actor in the global stage, you know? And so Trump, without consulting any of his top advisors, at least in some departments, withheld sending aid to Ukraine a few months ago.
To the tune of like $400,000, I think.
Oh, more than that.
400 million?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it was substantial aid packages.
Yeah.
And then he withheld that aid without consulting his advisors. They don't know what's going on. And then after some pressure, especially as these calls as this information starts to leak out, he resumed the aid. And so that, to me, suggests that he was withholding the aid in order to pressure the president of Ukraine into getting that dirt on Joe Biden, or Biden's son. That's not my conspiracy theory. That just, from what I've read and the information, seems to suggest. It's at least odd.
He's
right?
even, like, half admitted it, I think. Like, he's said something to I just don't like giving money to these countries and not getting anything back in return.
Yeah. I scratch your back, you scratch my back.
I mean, he brought that up in the phone conversation, too, that, like, the United States has been assisting Ukraine and hasn't been getting a lot in return. Like, in his perfect conversation, even, that was brought up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're always kicking the ball down the court. I'm not going to do this well, but, like, there's really great sort of caricatures or metaphors or memes about this where, like, Trump's lawyer, Giuliani, you know, something bad will come out, and Giuliani will first say, like, we didn't do that. And then it'll come out that, like, okay, they did do that. And then he'll be like, so what if we did do that? What's wrong with that? And then it'll come out even more, and he's like, everyone does that. And then it comes out even more, and he's like, it's not a bad thing that we did that. You know what I mean? So they keep just like slowly letting go more to say, like, okay, you know, maybe we were doing this bad thing, but the bad thing isn't even bad anymore, so why should you care about it? And that's fundamentally undemocratic. That is dangerous for us as a society. It's literally dangerous, people. I cannot overstate that anymore. That, like, when we go out and we drive around the city of Rochester, we're driving around Monroe County, going about our daily lives, like, life doesn't have to be that way. You know, I know that life can be hard in terms of economics and healthcare and everything like that, but we live in a country that's, like, pretty, you know, I'm proud to be an American in terms of, like, the institutions that we have and also the principles that we at least nominally stand for. I'm proud of that. And life doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way if we let people like Donald Trump and other people who don't fundamentally care about democracy and just want power in their own right, if we let them get away with stuff like that, we will not live in a society more that's free. And you can look at Russia and you can look at China and you can look at lots of other countries around the world where our freedoms can be taken away real quick. And then we'll wonder what happened. Oh, you know what happened? We just, you know, we got lazy, we were hoodwinked, and we let these bad actors get away with bad things. And we have to hold people accountable, especially our leaders, for doing things that we wouldn't ourselves do, or at least that we shouldn't do. You know, think about what you would want to tell your kids. Would you want your children to do some of the things that, like, you know, Donald Trump and the administration's doing? I don't think so. It's not the society that we want to live in. And so they have to be held accountable.
Should we take a quick break before transitioning?
Let's do that.
times of sound and vision. The color of my room where I will live. Blue, blue. Lay your blinds drawn all day. Nothing to read, nothing to say. Blue, blue. I will sit right down, waiting for the gift of sound and vision. Waiting for the gift of sound and vision.
Sound and Vision by David Bowie.
And this is 100.9 FM WXIR in Rochester. You're listening to Evidence of Design. We were just talking about the impeachment inquiry that was opened up against President Donald Trump. It only took 3 years, folks. So we won't be talking about that anymore. We might tie some other things in, but we'd love to hear from you about that inquiry, or we're going to switch gears now and talk about climate justice. There has been a lot in the news recently about climate change and climate justice and people fighting for climate justice. Greta Thunberg, the 16-year-old sort of a climate activist from, is it Sweden?
From Sweden, yeah.
From Sweden. She, sort of famously took a boat across the Atlantic and landed in New York City at the UN and gave sort of a very powerful speech, I think, at the United Nations against the world leaders. And
I guess we should also mention this is after a year of striking in front of her government for, like, every Friday, skipping school to protest climate change, citing sort of, why am I going to school if I don't have a future? And compelling the politicians in her nation to take action against climate change. And I think Sweden does have, is doing a lot more than the United States is. And now her movement and movements of other, particularly young activists around the world have been given much more of a voice.
And so we'll talk about climate justice right now, and we do want to hear from you. Give us a ring at 585-219-8889. Don't be shy about calling into live radio. Matt won't bite, at least not over the air. 585-219-8889. Give us a call or give us an email, radioeod@gmail.com. Let's talk about climate justice. So, climate change is a problem. Do we agree upon that?
Yes.
I don't know if the science is in.
So, we'll all agree that climate change is a problem.
Can I say something real quick? I was scrolling through social media last night on Facebook, and I got an ad from Purdue University. You know those guys?
No, Purdue is a familiar name, but
they're this, like, I don't know if they're actually a school. I've never really looked into it, but they're this.
It is a real school, yeah. Yes.
What's Purdue University? There's this they make videos all the time, and it's just always promoting, like, alternative conservative values and facts. And there was one on climate change in my feed last night. I hadn't had one from them in a while, and I reported it for misleading information.
Nice.
So take that, whoever you were. Don't know if it was Purdue University.
You're going to be sued for slander. Good name of that esteemed university, if that is a university. Alternative conservative values those are some of my favorite nouns together.
That's the name of my next band.
Yeah, good old alternative conservative values in the US of A are, the whole climate change denialism. Yeah, we've talked about climate change before. It's certainly an issue. It's like the issue, right? Not only like the collapse of American democracy in face of the Trump administration, not only in like the future automation where none of us will have jobs anymore, and like the global 1% will just control like all of the world's means of production, and not only where like nuclear weapons can cause planetary holocaust, but also climate change, where human-induced activities can threaten the very fabric of our ecosystems and cause untold disaster and lack of natural resources. Like, the future is looking pretty bright, depending on where you live on the planet, because some places will get a lot darker.
Prager U, not Purdue University.
Prager U.
I have not gotten a lot of sleep in the past 3 weeks, so.
Oh boy. Oh boy. So I guess something we could mention is yesterday, actually, locally in Rochester, there was a Friday climate strike.
Yeah.
Along with
there was one the week before
all over
too.
The world. Yep. So the last 2 weeks that have surrounded the UN 2019 climate summit, where Greta and other young activists spoke in front of the UN to, ask them to take action against climate change, and soon. There were strikes all over the world that echoed the strikes that students have been participating in every Friday for the last year. And so yesterday and last week in Rochester, there were strikes led actually by the Rochester People's Climate Coalition,
right,
who we did a few weeks ago have a representative on our show. But I unfortunately wasn't able to attend, but there was an hour and a half of chanting and a march starting at City Hall in downtown Rochester. So this is something that people are even getting involved with on a local level.
Mm-hmm. Because people have to be involved on a local level, because we know that our governments and the business community aren't doing much about climate change, right? The things that they are promoting are slow, gradual changes or technological shifts that will just magically make CO2 not become exerted into the atmosphere as much. Mary, why is it important for these marches to happen?
Well, I think as we've seen with a lot of other mass movements, sometimes having a great number of people is the only way that you can make things change. That's what, Bernie Sanders is arguing too in wanting to change the infrastructure of this nation. What we need is to have great numbers of people to turn out in order to make this thing change.
I agree.
It does look like we have a caller, so let me just bring them on the air. One moment.
Let's do it. Matt, don't bite them. Do.
All right. You should be on the air.
Hello, caller. Are you there?
Here.
There we go. Hey, what's up, Aaron from Queens? How's it going?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
It's good. Let's bring down your volume a little bit. We're doing pretty good. Thanks for giving us a ring. What do you got on your mind today?
So I usually. Oh man, yeah, I do sound kind of loud there, don't I? Don't worry about it.
No, we're turning it down. Don't worry. Just you can keep talking as normal. Yep.
Yeah, thank you. So I usually try to call in with a hot take. Something interesting to say, something different, something to make everybody think, something to really tickle the mind. But I'm afraid I don't really have anything that special this week because I think the climate change thing and the Trump thing are pretty much of the same category of stuff that should have been done years ago. Obviously, yes, Trump needs to be impeached. He could have been impeached on day one when he was elected president, and it's insane that the Democrats are taking so long to actually do that. It just shows how weak-willed Democratic leadership is and how generally worthless a mainstream Democratic leadership is these days, that it's actually taken this long. They could have picked one of 1,000 things to impeach him on until now. And climate change, of course, it's it's insane that this is, nobody's really in power is really doing anything about climate change in the U.S. at this point, so this is even worse. It's also bleaker for the future. It's way more devastating for the country and the planet as a whole than, Trump's worthless impeachment that will never actually matter or get anything done when it inevitably gets stalled in the Senate. But these are just in the category of things that, it's obvious. no downside to the Democrats to impeaching. It makes sense to do it. There's no downside to tackling climate change. It literally helps everybody with, new jobs, investment in the economy, green technology, lower pollution, better health for everybody, and the chance for the world. I'm really trying hard not to swear now because this one's really crazy. The climate change. It's
don't swear.
a chance for the world to actually continue existing and not become Venus. These are just topics. And I appreciate you guys are covering them because it's important. And we know it's important to cover based on the fact that most people in the country, let's say about half the people in the country don't want Trump impeached and don't want to do anything about climate change and are attacking, a 16-year-old girl. But that's my rant of the day. I just wanted to comment on the fact that these are sort of the obvious topics.
So, Aaron...
But thank you guys for bringing attention to them anyways.
Aaron, hang on the line there. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So, I agree with your sentiments, too, that, thank you for covering these topics. It's the whole point of grassroots radio and having a platform like 100.9 WXIR. That's what we're here for, and so appreciate you listening and participating as well, because that's what we need to do. And I also agree with your sentiment that, why do the Democrats wait 3 years to do this? Seemingly spineless. What's going on with that? But I feel like I can hold them accountable because I feel like I know what they should be doing, and I feel like I'm kind of on that side. I would identify as a progressive or a liberal or a Democrat or whatever label I want to use, so I can feel like I can hold them accountable because I'm in that party or that camp. What I'm worried about is, like you said, those 50% of people who don't want Trump impeached. I don't know what my role should be as either a radio host or as a citizen in this country to say, what the bloody heck is wrong with you folks for supporting this president, and cannot you see that you are working against your own interests and the interests of me and the vast majority of people in this country? What do we do as the future of this country, do you think, with those 50% of people? I'm on 538 right now. 43% of people approve of Donald Trump. I don't know what we do about that,
The sad thing is at this point there's really nothing we can do. There's no things you can say. There's nobody you can talk to. There's no statistics you can show them. There's no studies. There's no evidence. There's no reason. There's nothing. And the climate change issue really points out how sort of bleak and inevitable the prospect is. And you kind of just have to really hope for demographic change and wait for a lot of these older people to die off that are contributing to this stuff, because the climate change thing is a win-win-win-win. For number one, the world keeps to continue existing, which is great. Number two, everybody gets more jobs. Number three, the air is cleaner, the water is cleaner. The oceans have life in them actually, instead of turning into acidified, overheated, oxygen free, devoid lifescapes devoid of life completely. It's there's literally, other than 10 people who are currently coal executives, there's no one in their obvious own interest should be supporting inaction against climate change, or the insane nihilistic stuff where people say nuke the whales, or let's burn all the oil, or
nuke the
whales. There's literally people out there who want to burn all the oil and destroy the world just to own the libs. And it's for people like that, there's really nothing you can do, and that's the sad thing about it. And you guys can keep talking about it, we can all keep talking about it, but at this point it's really just hoping that time and demographic change makes things better, or even that things just get so worse, so bad, that some people have no choice, for their own livelihood, their own survival, but to actually do something different. And in an extreme situation like that, I would imagine a good percent of people would change. People value, once it gets down to it, that people realize their own lives are at stake, that might do something. But at this point, it sucks, but that's the way it is. Nobody's going to really listen at this point.
Yeah, I think Aaron when you said that climate change it's a win-win-win scenario, and you said number one, the planet keeps on continue existing. Number two, I would say there is no number two. The planet keeps on existing. That should be enough of a reason for anybody.
Right. Yeah. And when that's at stake, it's insane that anybody is for inaction. It's like if they're wrong, then I don't even know what the downside is. Then we see more windmills. I don't know. I don't know what's so wrong with that. When you're driving down a highway, you just see unnecessary windmills. Or the alternative, or the alternative is the planet that turns into Venus.
Right.
I don't know. It doesn't seem like a hard choice to me.
I think the loss is for people in power to lose power.
Yeah. I mean,
I think that's the only argument, and it's not a good one, but it's a valid one, is that people in power don't want to lose the ability to continue oppressing and the ability to continue running things the way they want to run them.
Again, I mean, I see that's true for people in the oil industry and coal industry, and the oil industry for sure still has a huge control over political dynamics in this country. But for the other than people in the fossil fuels industry, who are we oppressing with continuing climate change? Like ourselves? Like do the people against this stuff not realize they have to live on the same planet too?
Well, I guess
it doesn't really make sense.
No, but there the argument sort of is when you have enough money, you can buy your way into a better situation. And if you if you have enough money to stay to
move to Mars.
Yeah, not even to Mars, but to stay in a location where you can ignore natural disasters and ignore people who are actually feeling those natural disasters. You can ignore it for your whole life, probably.
Or we're seeing that right now with the Bahamas.
Certainly.
Yeah, but why would you have to do that? Why would you even want to have to move to New Zealand to escape ecological disaster when you could just,
To be fair, New Zealand's on fault lines, so that probably wouldn't be a good place to go.
Right. Well, apparently a lot of billionaires of the world are buying lots of land and building like bunkers in New Zealand because it's apparently like one of the most likely places to survive sort of a global nuclear war or climate change or something like that. Fault other than the earthquakes, but I'm sure they have a plan for that too.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly don't have an answer. I'm just, I try and think through things like why are people resisting, and I tend to think in some ways it's, not wanting to let go of power, and in other ways just it's hard to change. And I don't think either of those are right. But I think to some degree, maybe you can make sense of it. Not that I know how to change those people's minds yet.
Right, and stuff becomes so polarized now. Like when I was joking about, destroying the planet to own the libs, some people really do think that way because climate change used to be more bipartisan. There used to be efforts on both Republican and Democratic sides to actually look at, say, cap and trade carbon taxes, that sort of thing. And then as time went on, as it became more clear to everybody that the left and liberals were more interested in this issue than the conservatives, then conservatives had to drop it. They had to ignore it entirely. Remember, similar to gun control in this country, the Brady assault weapons ban passed with a good amount of bipartisan support. Mm-hmm. And then over time, as the issue became more polarized, conservatives realized that they, just had to be against that because Democrats were for it. And so, if anything, even though the climate change situation has gotten worse, even though the evidence has gotten stronger every single day, with setting heat records and wildfires and droughts, et cetera, that it becomes more clear that it's happening in our day-to-day life. It's almost like we're in a worse situation now politically because of that polarization, because conservatives just feel like they have to be against it. That contributes to the problem too.
Aaron, I'm going to say thanks a lot for your call, as always, on this station, and
Thank you very
great
much.
Points, and keep up the good fight.
You guys as well. Thank you.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Thank you.
I want to talk real quick about something, which is something you brought up earlier, Jason, about how Donald Trump still has a 43% approval rating in the country. How does that happen? How are there people who still think he's a legitimate sort of leader for this country, it's because there is a massive media operation that is dedicated to promoting his image as a positive one, because there are a lot of people who stand to make a lot of money because of Donald Trump. And as long as we are allowed to, or as long as we enable that through however it is that is enabled, through whatever systems it is that it creates that situation, this problem will continue to worsen. And I think the more time I spend with you on the show, the more time I spend talking with you and other people in conversations, the more I become convinced that capitalism is diametrically opposed to democracy.
I do actually have a question that's just how does that percentage actually get calculated? Like, how do we know that that continues to be accurate?
I'm not sure. There's political pollings, and I'm just looking at 538, which always has 24/7 the sort of the approval rating. And the approval rating, well, I'm sorry, this is how popular is Donald Trump? 43% approve.
I guess I wonder because like no one asks me, like how does that actually exist?
Right.
Yep.
I mean, there are clearly a lot of people in this country who like what the Republican Party has to stand for, and they elect Republicans into office, and they continue to do so. And whether or not that's 43%, I don't know, but the way that gerrymandering and redistricting and all of that, like that has set us up in a political system where what I feel like is a minority of interests control the majority of political outcomes. And I would like to believe that most Americans believe the same things I do, which is, promote democracy, promote social justice, and critique some of the things that Matt you're just mentioning, which is the fact that the worst excesses of capitalism harm our society. I'm not sure though. I know a few people who love Donald Trump, who love the Republican Party, and all they do is watch Fox News all day. And that is literally, I don't know many people who like Donald Trump, and that's because I live in my own, sort of political bubble too. And that's where I was going. We're asking Aaron that question because I don't want to accept the fact that democracy won't work anymore for these people. I don't want to accept the fact that we're just so far away in our camps that we can't have positive dialogue through both sides. I don't want to accept that because democracy is what I stand for, and that means talking to people and talking to the other side. And I don't want to accept the fact that we're just not going to switch sides. But I do fear that, what else can we do? Because I don't, it seems so infantile to me. Like, you must have an infantile political persuasion to think that, like, the Trump administration is a good thing. You must be infantile. But I don't want to do that because that's bad. I shouldn't label people like that, and I don't want to essentialize them that way. But to me, it seems like you're a child if you think that.
I mean, I think that bringing this back to education is important. I think we've talked a few times on this show. I know I hosted one show where we talked about access to literacy and what that means for the way you think. And I think in a lot of cases, people who legitimately support Donald Trump, not that they don't have the capacity, but maybe haven't had an opportunity to learn how to think critically, or haven't been brought to see how that can be beneficial. And I think there's a lot of speak of like, you have to respect the office of the presidency. So whether or not people actually respect Donald Trump as a person, they respect the office because they're taught to. And I think I don't know how everyone's experience with education has been or how much they've actually gotten out of it. And I think, the three of us sitting here have a privilege of having university degrees and an ability and having been taught to think critically, and that not everyone has.
Yeah. Well, on a positive note to end this show, we do have folks who are taking to the streets and get involved, and really I think that's the solution. And we've talked about this on the show before, where you need mass movements of people to fundamentally reconceptualize politics. Whether or not the Democrats take control in 2020, for the most part, especially if it's like a Joe Biden Democrat, not much is going to change. And fundamentally, not much is going to change. We need to reconceptualize politics in the United States to be one that is less centered on the worst excesses of capitalism and more centered on social values and actually a social collective. That's very important. People like Greta Thunberg are raising awareness to bringing up things like climate change, and also those climate protests that we've seen around the world are very important because people are taking time out of their lives to go to the streets. What's going on in Hong Kong is important. People taking time out of their lives to go to the streets and fight for rights that want to be removed by those in power. That's very important. That is where we need to go as a direction of this country, is we need to fight and take time out of our lives to become involved. We cannot say, why does my one vote matter? Voting doesn't matter. The Electoral College exists. That is a fundamentally fatalistic position, and that means you've given up. And I refuse to give up. And with that, we should remind you that the Grassroots Radio Conference is coming next week. Hey, transition. So this is really exciting. There is the Grassroots Radio Conference that WXIR is hosting in conjunction with Poder and Wayo. Very exciting. There are other stations all around the country doing work like we do, and you can hang out here in Rochester next Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, October 4th, 5th, and 6th, I believe, and hang out and meet people all around the country doing work like this, not tied to a corporate body, really people, normal everyday people, producing radio shows that I think are having fantastic conversations. We'll be there. You can meet us. We're basically celebrities. Isn't that right, Matt?
Who are you? You
can sign his forehead, and you can sign my, I don't know. I'll shake my head too.
All right.
Anyways, we're gonna roll out from that best exit of a radio show ever. This was 100.9 FM WXAR. We were evidence. Now, this is 100.9 FM WXR. We are Evidence of Design. I was your host, Jason Taylor. Joined by my good friends and co-hosts, Matt Treadwell.
I think you should do that. I think you should do.
This was a perfect conversation we had all around. Many more perfect conversations to come. And Mary Lawrence.
Thanks, guys.
Be well, be safe, be perfect, and bye-bye.